My name is Marcus, and at 28, I never imagined my own sister would destroy my life with a single lie. When Natalie accused me of something unthinkable, my world collapsed overnight. Family, friends, and coworkers vanished. Then the truth emerged, but instead of remorse, she demanded I apologize to her. What followed shocked even me. Truth isn't always enough to heal wounds, especially when someone refuses to take responsibility. Let me tell you how a single lie tore apart our family and why, even when the truth finally came out, some relationships can never be repaired. Before I dive into this painful story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. If my experience resonates with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to show support for those who faced false accusations. Trust me, your support means everything when you're fighting to reclaim your life. I grew up in Oakwood, a quiet middle-class suburb outside Columbus, Ohio. Our house was nothing special, a 4-bedroom colonial with a basketball hoop in the driveway where I spent countless hours perfecting my jump shot. My parents, Robert and Elizabeth, were hardworking people. Dad managed a local bank branch, and Mom taught 3rd grade at the elementary school just 2 blocks from our house. From the outside, we looked like the perfect American family, but inside our home, there was always an unspoken hierarchy. My sister Natalie was the golden child from the moment she was born when I was 3. I still remember the day they brought her home from the hospital. "Marcus, meet your baby sister. You have to protect her," my dad said, placing her tiny body in my arms with careful supervision. I took that responsibility seriously, maybe too seriously. As we grew up, the pattern became clear. Natalie could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. When she broke Mom's favorite vase at age 6, she blamed me, and despite being in the backyard when it happened, I got grounded for a week. "Marcus should have been watching her," was my mother's reasoning. This wasn't an isolated incident. When I won the science fair in 8th grade, Natalie threw a tantrum during the awards ceremony. Instead of watching me receive my certificate, my parents took her for ice cream to calm her down. I rode home with my friend Jack's family, my certificate crumpled in my backpack. When I got home, no one even asked to see it. "Natalie's just sensitive," my mother would explain whenever I expressed frustration. "She needs extra attention. You're so independent, Marcus. We don't worry about you." By high school, the differences in how we were treated became even more pronounced. I worked part-time at the local grocery store to save for college. Natalie spent her high school years bouncing between friend groups, starting drama, and barely maintaining passing grades. When she crashed our mom's car after taking it without permission, they bought her a new phone the next week to cheer her up. When I asked for help with college application fees, Dad suggested I pick up extra shifts. Still, I tried to be the good brother. When Natalie called me at 2 a.m. needing a ride home from a party where she'd been drinking, I drove 30 minutes to pick her up without telling our parents. When bullies targeted her after she spread rumors about a popular girl, I stood up for her. Despite everything, she was my sister, and that meant something to me. Our paths diverged even more after high school. I worked my way through Ohio State, double majoring in business and computer science, often taking on a full course load while working 30 hours a week. Meanwhile, Natalie enrolled at the community college, dropped out after 1 semester, and moved back home where our parents continued supporting her financially. She cycled to minimum wage jobs, never lasting more than a few months at any rate. By 23, I had landed a good job at a tech company in Columbus, bought my first condo, and started building a life for myself. Natalie, at 20, was still living at home, partying regularly, and developing what appeared to be a serious problem with alcohol. Any suggestion from me that she might need help was met with hostility from both her and my parents. "Stop trying to parent your sister," my mother snapped when I expressed concern after finding Natalie passed out on our parents' bathroom floor during a Sunday visit. "She's just finding herself." My resentment grew, but I swallowed it for the sake of family peace. I limited my visits home to major holidays and occasional Sunday dinners, creating a comfortable distance that helped me maintain my sanity. When I met Claire at a friend's wedding, everything in my life finally felt like it was falling into place. Smart, kind, and perceptive, she saw through my family's dynamics immediately. They treat you like an outsider and her like she's made of glass, Claire observed after our first Thanksgiving together. That's not healthy, Marcus. I couldn't disagree, but years of conditioning had normalized it for me. They mean well, I defended weakly. Claire gave me a look that said she wasn't buying it but didn't push further. Just don't let them make you feel less worthy of love. The last normal family gathering before everything fell apart was Thanksgiving that year. Natalie brought her newest boyfriend, Tyler, a guy with shifty eyes who kept checking his phone. Claire made polite conversation with my parents, while I noticed Natalie downing glass after glass of wine. When she spilled red wine on my mother's white tablecloth, Elizabeth simply dabbed at it with a napkin and said, "Accidents happen, sweetheart." Later that night, I overheard Natalie and Tyler arguing outside. "You promised you'd have the money," he hissed. She shushed him, noticing me in the doorway. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Mind your own business, perfect brother," she slurred, pushing past me. I should have recognized the warning signs. The resentment in her eyes that night was different, darker somehow. But I couldn't have imagined what would come next, how a lifetime of enabling and resentment would culminate in the worst accusation imaginable. Christmas arrived quickly that year. Claire couldn't join me because her grandmother was ill, so I drove to my parents' house alone on December 23rd. I hadn't seen my family since Thanksgiving, nearly a month earlier. Work had been hectic, and to be honest, I wasn't eager to deal with Natalie's drama again so soon. When I arrived, the house was decorated as it always had been. Mom's collection of nutcrackers lined the mantel, and Dad's oversized star topped the tree. Natalie was surprisingly subdued that evening, though she was constantly checking her phone, her fingers typing furiously. Every notification made her jump. "Everything okay, Nat?" I asked as we set the table for dinner. "Fine," she muttered, not meeting my eyes. "Tyler and I broke up." I wasn't sorry to hear it. "His loss," I said, trying to be supportive despite my dislike for the guy. She gave me an odd look, somewhere between anger and calculation. "Yeah, well, men are all the same, aren't they?" Dinner was a relatively normal affair. Mom made her famous pot roast, Dad talked about the bank's holiday party, and Natalie pushed food around her plate, while periodically excusing herself to check her phone. I told them about the promotion I was being considered for, and for once, they seemed genuinely interested in my life. "That's wonderful, honey," Mom said, patting my hand. "You've always been so responsible." I noticed Natalie's jaw tighten at the praise, but she said nothing. After dinner we watched "It's a Wonderful Life," as per family tradition. Natalie disappeared halfway through, claiming a headache. I went to bed around 11, texting Claire goodnight before falling asleep in my childhood bedroom, surrounded by basketball trophies and science fair ribbons. I woke the next morning to my father standing in my doorway. His face was ashen, his hands trembling slightly at his sides. "Dad? What's wrong?" I sat up, instantly alert. "Get dressed," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Your mother and I need to speak with you. Downstairs. Now." My stomach dropped. Had something happened to Claire? To my grandparents? I pulled on jeans and a sweatshirt, my hands clumsy with sudden fear. Downstairs, my mother sat rigid at the kitchen table, her eyes red-rimmed. Natalie was nowhere to be seen. "Sit down, Marcus," my father said, not looking at me. I did as I was told, my heart hammering against my ribs. "What's going on? Is everyone okay?" My mother made a small, choke sound. My father cleared his throat twice before speaking. "Natalie came to us this morning," he began, his voice strained. "She told us something we need to address with you." "Okay," I said slowly, confusion mounting. "She says," my mother cut in, her voice breaking, "that when you visited for Labor Day weekend you went into her room at night and sexually assaulted her while she was sleeping." The words hit me like a physical blow. I actually jerked backward in my chair. What? That's insane! I would never. How could you even think? I couldn't form complete sentences, my mind reeling in shock. She gave us details, Marcus, my father said, finally meeting my eyes. Specific details. I barely saw her that weekend, I protested, memories flooding back. I arrived Friday night, had dinner with you guys, then spent all day Saturday with Jack at his lake house. I came back late, and Sunday morning we had breakfast before I drove home. I was never alone with her. My mother was crying now. She says it happened Friday night, after we went to bed. This is completely fabricated, I said, my voice growing stronger with indignation. Call Jack. He'll tell you I texted him when I got to bed because we were meeting early the next morning. She's very upset, Marcus. My father continued as if I hadn't spoken. She says she's been afraid to tell us, afraid we wouldn't believe her over you. Because it's a lie, I shouted, standing up. I need to talk to Natalie. Where is she? As if on cue, Natalie appeared in the doorway, eyes puffy and red, looking small and vulnerable in an oversized sweatshirt. How could you? She whispered, her voice trembling dramatically. I trusted you. You're my brother. Natalie, you know this never happened, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Why are you saying these things? She launched into a tearful account of how I supposedly came into her room, covered her mouth, and assaulted her. The details were disturbing and completely fabricated. As she spoke, I noticed inconsistencies immediately. You said I was wearing a blue t-shirt, but I didn't even bring one that weekend, I interrupted. And you said your bedroom door was closed, but it doesn't even have a working latch, it's always ajar. See? Natalie cried, turning to our parents. He's trying to confuse me, to make me doubt myself. That's what abusers do. My parents looked torn, pain etched across their faces. They wanted to believe their daughter, but some part of them must have known this accusation was wildly out of character for me. I have never, would never hurt Natalie or any woman, I stated firmly, looking directly at my parents. This is a complete fabrication, and I don't know why she's doing this, but it's not true. My father ran his hands through his hair. Marcus, we don't know what to think. But Natalie is very upset, and until we figure this out, we think it would be best if you left. You're kicking me out? On Christmas Eve? Because of a lie? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. We're not saying we believe her entirely, my mother said weakly. We just need time to process this. If you don't leave voluntarily, my father added, not meeting my eyes, Natalie says she wants to call the police. The threat hung in the air between us. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw something I'd never seen before. Behind the tears and trembling lip was something cold and calculating. She was watching me, gauging my reaction. Fine, I said finally, my voice hollow. I'll go. But this is wrong, and deep down, you all know it. I went upstairs to pack my things, my hands shaking so badly I could barely zip my bag. As I headed for the stairs, Natalie stepped out of her room, blocking my path. For a moment, we were alone in the hallway. Why? I asked simply. Why would you do this? The vulnerable victim act dropped for just a second. You think you're so perfect, she hissed, her eyes suddenly dry. Everyone thinks Marcus can do no wrong. Well, now they'll see. She turned and fled down the stairs before I could respond, loud sobs echoing back up to where I stood frozen in disbelief. The drive back to my apartment was a blur. My phone kept lighting up with texts from my mother, vague messages about working through this as a family, and getting Natalie help. Not one message suggested they believed me over her. When I finally reached my apartment, I called Claire, my voice breaking as I tried to explain the inexplicable. She drove over immediately, holding me as the full impact of what had happened finally hit me. They chose her, I said, my voice hollow. They always choose her. The days following Natalie's accusation were a nightmare that only grew worse. Word spread through our extended family like wildfire. My phone buzzed constantly with messages ranging from cautious inquiries to outright condemnation. "How could you do something so disgusting?" my cousin Amy texted on Christmas Day. I didn't respond. "I always thought you were a good guy," wrote my high school friend Thomas, before blocking me on all social media. My Aunt Deborah called just to tell me I was no longer welcome at her house and to stay away from her daughters. She hung up before I could even defend myself. Only my Uncle Stanley, my father's brother, approached the situation with any skepticism. "This doesn't sound like you, Marcus," he said when he called 2 days after Christmas. "Natalie has always been, let's say, dramatic. What exactly happened?" I explained everything, my voice hoarse from repeating my defense to the few people willing to listen. Stanley was quiet for a long moment. "I believe you," he said finally. "Robert and Elizabeth have always had blinders on when it comes to that girl. Give them time to come to their senses." His support was a lifeline, but it couldn't stop what came next. On December 28th, I received a call from Harold, my supervisor at work. "Marcus, we need to talk," he began uncomfortably. "We received a concerning call about you today." My stomach dropped. "Let me guess. My sister called you." "She did. She made some very serious allegations. Given the nature of these claims, we'll need you to take a leave of absence while HR investigates." "Harold, these accusations are completely false," I protested. "She's making this up." "I hope that's the case," he replied stiffly. "But we have protocols to follow. We'll be in touch." 2 weeks later, I was formally terminated. "The company has decided to go in a different direction," the HR representative explained vaguely during our final call. We both knew the real reason. Meanwhile, neighbors in my condo building began avoiding me in the hallways and elevator. Someone had apparently posted something online, and now people gave me a wide berth, hurrying their children inside when they saw me approaching. Even my local coffee shop, where I'd been a regular for years, suddenly felt hostile. The barista who used to greet me by name now barely made eye contact as she handed over my change. Claire remained my rock through it all, but even our relationship showed signs of strain. She never doubted my innocence, but the constant stress took its toll. "Maybe we should go away for a while," she suggested one evening as I stared blankly at yet another rejection email from a job application. "Just until things cool down." "Run away, you mean?" I asked bitterly. "Like I've done something wrong?" "That's not what I meant," she said quietly. "I just hate seeing you like this." I apologized later, but these moments of tension became more frequent. Claire deserved better than to be collateral damage in Natalie's vendetta against me. As January dragged on, I barely left my apartment. My savings dwindled as I continued paying rent and bills with no income. I jumped at every knock on the door, fearing it might be police officers coming to arrest me based on Natalie's lies. One afternoon, while picking up groceries, a woman recognized me in the store. "You should be in jail," she hissed, loud enough for others to hear. I abandoned my shopping cart and left, shaking. At Claire's insistence, I consulted with a lawyer, Patricia Mendez, who specialized in false accusation cases. "Unfortunately, these situations are complicated," Patricia explained during our consultation. "Even without physical evidence, accusations like this can destroy reputations. The court of public opinion doesn't operate on innocent until proven guilty." "So what can I do?" I asked desperately. "Document everything. Save every text, email, and voicemail from your sister and parents. Don't contact Natalie directly. And prepare yourself for a long road ahead." My parents continued their pattern of vague, non-committal communication. My mother would text things like, "We're praying for healing for both of you," while my father sent, "Give us time to sort this out." Neither ever explicitly stated they believed me. Christmas and New Year's passed in a blur of depression and isolation. Instead of my mother's traditional Christmas breakfast and opening presents in pajamas around the tree, I sat alone in my apartment, watching old movies and trying not to check my phone every 5 minutes. Claire spent Christmas morning with me before going to her parents' house for dinner. She invited me to join, but I couldn't bear to potentially bring my dark cloud over her family's celebration. New Year's Eve, traditionally a night when my friend group would rent a cabin at Hocking Hills, was spent on my couch, Claire asleep beside me before the ball dropped. I kissed her forehead at midnight and made a silent resolution to somehow reclaim my life from Natalie's lies. As January turned to February with no improvement, I seriously considered moving away. Maybe in a new city, without the whispers and stares, I could start over. I began researching apartments in Chicago, imagining a fresh start where nobody knew my name or the terrible things my sister had accused me of doing. 3 months after Natalie's accusation shattered my life, my phone rang with a call from my cousin Jessica. I almost didn't answer. Jessica and Natalie had always been close, and I expected more accusations or pleas to admit what I'd done. "Marcus? Don't hang up," Jessica said quickly when I answered. "I need to tell you something important." "I'm listening," I replied warily. "It's about Natalie. I know she lied about what happened." My heart began racing. "What do you mean?" "She got drunk at my apartment last weekend. Really drunk. She started talking about you, about how everyone always thought you were so perfect. Then she said..." Jessica paused, her voice dropping. "She said she made it all up because she was jealous of your life with Claire, and because you had the audacity to be successful while she was stuck." I sat down heavily. "You're sure about this?" "I recorded it, Marcus." I had a feeling something wasn't right, so I started recording on my phone while she was talking. "You have actual proof?" My voice cracked with emotion. "Yes." She admitted everything. She even laughed about it, Marcus. She said she never thought Mom and Dad would believe her so completely. Relief and rage battled within me. "Jessica, I need that recording." "I know. That's why I'm calling. Uncle Stanley is arranging a family meeting this weekend. I think you should be there." Stanley had been busy behind the scenes, it seemed. He called me that evening to explain the plan. My parents had agreed to meet at his house, thinking it was just to discuss the situation. Natalie would be there too, unaware that Jessica was coming with her bombshell evidence. "It's time to end this, nephew," Stanley said firmly. "What that girl did to you is unforgivable." Saturday arrived, and I drove to Stanley's house with Claire, my stomach in knots. When we arrived, my parents were already there, looking uncomfortable. My father attempted a stiff greeting while my mother couldn't meet my eyes. Natalie arrived last, swaggering in as if she owned the place. "What's he doing here?" she demanded upon seeing me, immediately shifting into victim mode. "I can't be in the same room as him." "Sit down, Natalie," Stanley ordered in a tone that brooked no argument. "Jessica will be here any minute, and then we're going to have a family discussion." "Jessica? Why is she coming?" Natalie asked, suddenly wary. When Jessica arrived, she looked nervous but determined. She nodded slightly to me before taking a seat across from Natalie. "I've called this meeting because it's time for the truth," Stanley announced. "This family has been torn apart by serious accusations, and we need to address them once and for all. We've been through this," Natalie interrupted, voice quavering perfectly on cue. "I've already told everyone what Marcus did to me." "Yes, you've told your story," Jessica said, pulling out her phone. "But is it the real story, Natalie? What are you talking about?" Natalie's eyes darted nervously between Jessica and her phone. "I think everyone needs to hear this," Jessica said, hitting play. Natalie lunged for the phone, but Stanley blocked her. "Sit down. Now." The recording began to play, Natalie's slurred voice filling the silent room. "You want to know something funny, Jess? Marcus never touched me. Not ever. I made the whole thing up." My mother gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Why would you do that?" Jessica's voice asked on the recording. "Because he thinks he's so perfect." Recorded Natalie continued, laughing bitterly. "Perfect job, perfect girlfriend, perfect life. Meanwhile, I'm stuck at home with Mom and Dad breathing down my neck." He needed to be taken down a peg. I just didn't think they'd actually believe me so easily. Shows what they really think of their precious son, right? My father had gone pale, his hands gripping the armrests of his chair. But you accused him of something horrible. Jessica's voice protested. Whatever. It worked, didn't it? Now everyone's paying attention to me instead of Marcus for once. Jessica stopped the recording, the room plunging into horrified silence. That's not. I was drunk. I didn't mean. Natalie spluttered, looking around wildly. She manipulated me into saying those things. Natalie, stop. My father said, his voice barely audible. Just stop. You're going to believe some edited recording over your own daughter? Natalie cried, tears suddenly streaming down her face. I'm the victim here. The recording isn't edited, Jessica said quietly. And you know it. Is it true? My mother asked Natalie, her face ashen. Did you lie about what Marcus did? For a moment, Natalie maintained her defensive posture, but as she looked around the room at the faces turned toward her, something changed. Her shoulders sagged, the tears stopped flowing, and a cold expression settled over her features. Fine. Yes. I made it up, she admitted flatly. But you don't understand what it's like living in his shadow. Everyone loves Marcus. Perfect Marcus who never does anything wrong. You destroyed my life, I said, speaking for the first time since the recording played. I lost my job. My reputation. People look at me like I'm a monster. All because you were jealous? I didn't think it would go that far, Natalie muttered. I was just angry, and maybe a little drunk when I first said it. Then Mom and Dad believed me, and it felt good to finally be the one they cared about more. We always cared about you, my mother cried. No, you worried about me, Natalie shot back. It's not the same thing. You were always comparing me to him, always wondering why I couldn't be more like perfect Marcus. So you accused me of sexual assault? I was trembling with anger now. Do you have any idea what that did to me? What it's still doing to me? I'm sorry, okay? She said, not sounding sorry at all. I was messed up. Tyler had just dumped me after taking all my money. I felt like my life was falling apart, and yours was so perfect. That doesn't excuse what you did, my father said, his voice shaking. Not even close. Whatever. Natalie stood up abruptly. I admitted it, okay? Can we move on now? Move on? Claire spoke up, incredulous. You think everyone can just move on after what you did? Natalie glared at her. No one asked you, little Miss Perfect Girlfriend. This is a family matter. Natalie, that's enough, Stanley said firmly. You need to understand the gravity of what you've done. My mother was quietly sobbing now, my father's arm around her shoulders. He looked at me, real anguish in his eyes. Marcus, I don't know what to say. We should have. I should have. Natalie made a disgusted sound. Of course, now it's all about how sorry we are for Marcus again. You need help, Natalie, my father said, finally looking at her directly. Professional help. I don't need anything from any of you. She spat, grabbing her purse. This whole family is pathetic. She stormed out, slamming the door behind her. In the silence that followed, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Vindication, yes, but also a renewed sense of loss. The truth was out, but the damage was done. Nothing would ever be the same again. My mother rose shakily from her seat and approached me. Marcus, can you ever forgive us? I didn't have an answer for her. Not yet. My father broke down then, sobbing openly in a way I'd never seen before. We failed you, son. Completely failed you. Elizabeth remained frozen, seemingly unable to process the depth of the betrayal. Her face was blank, her eyes distant as she tried to reconcile the daughter she thought she knew with the person who could do something so cruel. We sat there in Stanley's living room, a family fractured beyond easy repair, the silence broken only by my father's muffled sobs and the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. For 2 weeks after the truth came out, I heard nothing from Natalie. My parents called daily, leaving voicemails full of tearful apologies and requests to meet. I wasn't ready. The wound was still too fresh, the betrayal too profound. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon, my phone buzzed with a text from Natalie. "Hey, we should talk about what happened. Coffee tomorrow?" I stared at the message in disbelief. The casual tone, as if she were suggesting we catch up after a minor disagreement, was stunning in its audacity. I didn't respond, but more messages followed throughout the week. "Marcus, don't be so dramatic. Everyone makes mistakes. Seriously, we need to move past this. Family is family. Mom and Dad won't stop crying. You're making this harder than it needs to be." Each message made my blood boil, but I maintained my silence. Claire advised me to block Natalie's number, but some part of me wanted to document every tone-deaf attempt at contact. Then, on Saturday morning, an insistent knocking at my apartment door startled me awake. I opened it to find Natalie standing there, an expectant expression on her face. "Finally," she said, pushing past me into my apartment. "You're really hard to get hold of, you know that?" I stood by the open door, momentarily speechless. "What are you doing here, Natalie? We need to talk, obviously. You can't ignore me forever." She flopped down on my couch, making herself comfortable. I closed the door slowly, trying to control my anger. "I think you've said more than enough already. Look," she said, examining her nails casually. "What happened was unfortunate, but it's over now. The truth is out, you're vindicated, everyone feels bad for you. Can we move on?" "Unfortunate?" I repeated incredulously. "You accused me of sexually assaulting you. You destroyed my reputation, cost me my job, made me a pariah in my own community. And you call that unfortunate?" She rolled her eyes. "It wasn't that big a deal. People get accused of stuff all the time. The point is, it's fixed now." "Fixed? Nothing is fixed. I still don't have a job. People still look at me differently. Our parents are devastated. That's kind of what I wanted to talk to you about," Natalie said, leaning forward. "Mom and Dad are being really weird with me now. I need you to tell them you forgive me so things can go back to normal." I laughed, a harsh sound devoid of humor. "You can't be serious." "I am serious. Look, I said I was sorry. What more do you want from me? It's not like anything really happened to you." "Nothing happened to me?" I was nearly shouting now. "Let me tell you exactly what happened because of your lies." I listed everything: the job loss, the friends who vanished, the neighbors who wouldn't look at me, the financial strain, the emotional toll, the therapy sessions I couldn't really afford but desperately needed. Natalie listened with increasing impatience. "Okay, so it was bad. But it's over now. And honestly, if you hadn't always been so perfect, making me look bad all the time, none of this would have happened. Are you seriously blaming me for your decision to falsely accuse me of assault?" "I'm just saying, there are two sides to every story," she insisted. "And I think you owe me an apology too." "I owe you an apology?" I was stunned. "For what exactly?" "For overreacting. For turning Mom and Dad against me. For making this whole thing such a big drama when we could have just worked it out privately." I stared at her, truly seeing the depth of her narcissism for the first time. "You need to leave. Now. Not until you agree to talk to Mom and Dad. Tell them we've made up and everything's fine." "Nothing is fine, Natalie. Nothing about this situation is fine, and I don't think it ever will be again." She stood up, her face hardening. "So that's it? You're just going to hold a grudge forever? Real mature, Marcus." "This isn't about maturity. It's about consequences. For once in your life, you're facing consequences for your actions." "Oh, please," she scoffed. "Like you've never made mistakes." "Not like this," I said quietly. "Never like this." The sound of a key in the lock interrupted our standoff. Claire entered, shopping bags in hand, freezing when she saw Natalie. "What's she doing here?" Claire asked, her voice tight. "Just leaving," I replied, not taking my eyes off my sister. Natalie's focus shifted to Claire, a calculating look crossing her face. Claire, maybe you can talk some sense into him. He's being completely unreasonable. Unreasonable? Claire set down her bag slowly. You accused him of sexual assault, and you think he's being unreasonable for not wanting to pretend it never happened? You don't understand our family dynamics, Natalie said dismissively. This is between me and my brother. No, Claire said firmly. What you did affected more than just Marcus. It affected me, your parents, your extended family. Actions have consequences, Natalie. Great, now she's got you parroting her lines. Natalie sneered. Always the perfect couple, right? So self-righteous. I think you should leave, Claire said, moving to stand beside me. Natalie looked between us, her expression souring. Fine. But this isn't over, Marcus. You'll regret not forgiving me when you had the chance. Family should stick together, no matter what. She pushed past us to the door, pausing with her hand on the knob. When you're ready to stop being so dramatic about this whole thing, you know where to find me. The door slammed behind her, leaving Claire and me in stunned silence. She really doesn't get it, does she? Claire said after a moment. No, I replied, the weight of that realization settling heavily on me. I don't think she ever will. A week after Natalie's shocking visit to my apartment, my parents asked to meet for dinner. I agreed, choosing a neutral restaurant where we'd be forced to maintain civility in public. Claire offered to come for support, but this was a conversation I needed to have alone. I arrived early, watching my parents enter the restaurant with apprehensive expressions. My father had aged years and months, deep lines etched around his eyes. My mother looked equally worn, her hands fidgeting nervously with her purse strap as they approached. Marcus, my father began awkwardly after they sat down. Thank you for meeting us. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak yet. My mother started, then faltered. We don't know where to begin. An apology might be appropriate, I suggested, my voice carefully neutral. We are so deeply sorry, my father said immediately, his eyes wet. We failed you completely. We should have believed you, should have known you could never do what Natalie accused you of. My mother reached across the table, stopping short of touching my hand when I tensed. I keep asking myself how we could have been so blind, she said. Not just about this, but about everything with Natalie over the years. Their remorse seemed genuine, but I still felt a wall between us. It's going to take time, I told them honestly. I'm not sure I can just forget how quickly you assumed the worst of me. We understand, my father said, though the pain in his eyes suggested he'd hoped for more immediate forgiveness. We'll give you all the time you need. As the waiter took our orders, my mother hesitantly asked, Has Natalie contacted you? I described Natalie's visit and her outrageous demand that I apologize to her. She's been making similar demands of us, my father admitted. She seems to think we can all just move past this like it was a minor disagreement. We've tried to explain how serious this is, my mother added. But she just accuses us of taking your side and being unfair to her. Are you still supporting her financially? I asked, already knowing the answer. They exchanged uncomfortable glances. We're trying to set better boundaries, my father said. It's difficult. She needs professional help, I said firmly. Real consequences, not more enabling. They nodded, but I could see the conflict in their eyes. Breaking lifelong patterns wouldn't happen overnight. At my parents' suggestion, we attempted a family therapy session the following week. The therapist, Dr. Peterson, was a calm, no-nonsense woman who established ground rules at the beginning of the session. We're here to communicate honestly but respectfully, she explained. Everyone will have a chance to speak without interruption. Natalie slouched in her chair, clearly there under protest. When her turn came to speak, she launched into a practiced speech about feeling overlooked and undervalued in the family. I made a mistake, she admitted grudgingly. But I'm ready to move forward if everyone else is. Natalie, Dr. Peterson said gently, Characterizing what happened as a mistake minimizes the seriousness of your actions. A false accusation of sexual assault has profound consequences. Why does everyone keep making such a big deal about this? Natalie exploded. It's over. I admitted I lied. What more do you want from me? Perhaps genuine remorse would be a start, I suggested coldly. The session deteriorated from there, with Natalie eventually storming out after accusing everyone of ganging up on her. Dr. Peterson recommended individual therapy for Natalie before attempting family sessions again, but Natalie refused to go. As spring arrived, the extended family began taking sides. Most rallied around me once the truth was known, but a few, like Aunt Deborah, who had initially condemned me so harshly, seemed embarrassed by their rush to judgment and avoided me entirely rather than apologize. Thanksgiving had always been a major family gathering at my grandparents' house, but this year, the family split into two separate events. My grandparents, Stanley, Jessica, and most cousins invited me and Claire to their celebration. Aunt Deborah hosted a smaller gathering for those who either still believed Natalie or felt too uncomfortable facing me. My parents attended both dinners, an awkward compromise that pleased no one. Natalie, not invited to my grandparents' house, spent the day sending increasingly angry texts to everyone, culminating in her showing up uninvited and intoxicated at my grandparents' doorstep just as dessert was being served. Families should be together on Thanksgiving, she slurred, pushing her way inside. Even family that makes mistakes. My grandmother Ruth, normally the peacekeeper of the family, surprised everyone by standing up from the table. Natalie, she said firmly, you weren't invited because you haven't taken responsibility for the harm you've caused. Not you too, Grandma, Natalie groaned. Marcus has everyone wrapped around his finger. This isn't about Marcus, Ruth continued, her voice steady. This is about you and your choices. What you did wasn't just a mistake or a little white lie. You deliberately tried to destroy your brother's life out of jealousy. That's not fair, Natalie protested, looking around for support and finding none. What's not fair is what you did to him, Ruth replied. Until you can truly understand that and make genuine amends, you're not welcome in my home. Natalie's face contorted with rage. Fine. Keep pretending you're all so perfect. I don't need any of you. She stormed out, slamming the door so hard that a framed family photo fell from the wall and shattered. The holidays only escalated Natalie's behavior. At Christmas, she arrived unannounced at my parents' house while they were hosting a small gathering. Already drunk when she arrived, she created a scene that culminated in her accusing the entire family of abandoning her when she needed them most. One by one, relatives who had been on the fence about the situation witnessed Natalie's behavior firsthand and made their decisions. My cousin Ethan, who had been close with Natalie since childhood, finally blocked her number after she called him 50 times in one night, alternating between abusive rants and tearful pleas for money. The final breaking point for my parents came in February, almost a year after the initial accusation. Natalie showed up at their house demanding money for rent, and when they finally refused, she destroyed my mother's collection of antique teacups, some of which had been passed down from her grandmother. She was like someone I didn't even recognize, my mother told me later, still shaken. Screaming that we'd chosen you over her, that we'd ruined her life. My father, after cleaning up the broken porcelain and comforting my distraught mother, finally made the call they'd been avoiding for years. He contacted a lawyer and filed for a restraining order against his own daughter. The hearing was brief but painful. Natalie represented herself, claiming our parents were under Marcus's influence, and that everyone was overreacting to one little mistake. The judge, reviewing the evidence of escalating behavior and threats, granted the order. As spring turned to summer, Uncle Stanley organized another family meeting, this time without Natalie. The gathering had the somber air of a funeral, which in many ways it was. We were mourning the loss of the Natalie we thought we knew, coming to terms with who she really was. I never imagined it would come to this, my mother said, dabbing at her eyes. Where did we go wrong with her? It wasn't just you, Stanley said gently. Natalie made her own choices. I sat quietly, processing my own complex emotions. While part of me felt vindicated that others finally saw what I'd glimpsed in Natalie that Christmas morning, another part grieved for the sister I'd once protected and loved despite her flaws. I keep waiting to wake up from this nightmare, my father admitted. To have my daughter back. The daughter you're remembering might never have existed, I said softly. At least not the way you thought she did. It was a harsh truth, but one we all needed to face. Natalie had shown us who she really was, and no amount of wishing could change that reality. 1 year after Natalie's accusation turned my life upside down, I stood in my new apartment in Chicago, watching the sunset paint the skyline in shades of orange and pink. The move had been a fresh start in many ways. A former colleague had recommended me for a position at his company, and 3 months into the new job, I was finally beginning to rebuild my career. Claire had moved with me, her unwavering support throughout the ordeal cementing what I already knew. In my darkest moments, she had been my light, never doubting me even when my own parents couldn't say the same. 2 weeks earlier, I had proposed on the shores of Lake Michigan, and the ring now sparkling on her finger caught the fading sunlight as she wrapped her arms around me from behind. "Penny for your thoughts," she murmured against my shoulder. "Just reflecting," I replied, covering her hands with mine. "It's been a year." She nodded, understanding the significance of the date without needing explanation. "You've come so far." Indeed I had. The therapy sessions I'd initially resisted had proven invaluable, helping me process not just the trauma of Natalie's accusation, but the lifetime of family dynamics that had preceded it. Dr. Mitchell had helped me recognize patterns I'd never questioned before, teaching me to set boundaries I should have established years ago. My relationship with my parents had slowly begun to heal, though it would never be what it once was. They called weekly now, our conversations gradually becoming less strained. They had sold the house in Ohio, downsizing to a condo in Florida where they were trying to build a new life away from the whispers and stares that had followed them after everything came to light. As for Natalie, she had moved to Nevada shortly after the restraining order was granted. According to Stanley, who somehow still kept tabs on her, she was working as a bartender and had briefly been engaged to someone she met at a casino. The engagement had apparently ended badly. She still occasionally sent demanding texts to various family members, but most had blocked her number by now. The most difficult decision I'd faced was whether to invite my parents to our upcoming wedding. Claire had left the choice entirely up to me, supporting whatever I decided. "They're still your parents," she said. "Despite everything, I know you love them." After much consideration, I sent the invitations. They called immediately upon receiving them, my mother crying with gratitude at being included in this milestone. We didn't discuss the fact that Natalie's invitation was conspicuously absent. Some wounds were still too fresh, some bridges permanently burned. On our wedding day, as the photographer arranged us for family photos, the empty space where a sister should have stood was palpable. My mother dabbed at her eyes, and I knew she was thinking of Natalie despite everything. Later, during a quiet moment at the reception, she approached me alone. "I want you to know," she said hesitantly, "that I'm trying to understand the difference between forgiveness and reconciliation. Your father and I have been talking about it a lot." I nodded, encouraging her to continue. "Forgiveness is something you do for yourself, to let go of the anger. But reconciliation requires both parties to acknowledge the wrong and work to rebuild trust." She looked at me with sad eyes. "I think I've forgiven Natalie, but I don't know if reconciliation is possible when she refuses to truly acknowledge what she did." It was the most insightful thing my mother had ever said about the situation. "I'm working on forgiveness too," I admitted. "But you're right. Reconciliation requires two willing participants." In the weeks following the wedding, I found myself thinking more about Natalie. Not with the anger that had consumed me for so long, but with something closer to pity. I sat down one evening and wrote her a letter I knew I would never send. "Natalie, I'm writing this for myself, not for you. For so long, I've carried the weight of your betrayal, allowing it to define me. I'm choosing to set that burden down now. What you did was unforgivable, but carrying that anger only hurts me, not you. I hope someday you find whatever it is you're looking for, whatever void you've been trying to fill with manipulation and drama. I'm moving forward with my life, and I truly wish you could find peace in yours. I sealed the letter and tucked it away in my desk drawer, a symbolic act of closure for myself. My parents continued their own journey of setting boundaries. When Natalie called on their anniversary, drunk and demanding money, my father calmly reminded her of the restraining order and ended the call. It was a small step, but significant for a man who had enabled his daughter's behavior for decades. The extended family found its new normal too. Holiday gatherings resumed without the tension of choosing sides. Jessica and her husband announced they were expecting their first child, bringing joy to a family that had experienced too much pain. Stanley, ever the family patriarch, made sure everyone stayed connected despite the geographic distance that now separated us. As Claire and I settled into married life, building our home and planning our future, I often reflected on what family truly means. It isn't just shared DNA or names on a family tree. It's trust, respect, and mutual support. It's standing by someone when they're falsely accused, as Claire had done for me. It's admitting when you're wrong, as my parents had eventually done. And sometimes, it's recognizing when a relationship has become too toxic to maintain, as we all had with Natalie. The truth had eventually surfaced, as it tends to do. But truth alone couldn't repair what had been broken. Without accountability and genuine remorse, some wounds remain open, some bridges stayed burned. Natalie's refusal to take true responsibility for her actions hadn't just cost her a brother, it had cost her an entire family. As difficult as the journey had been, I had emerged stronger, with clearer boundaries and a deeper understanding of what I deserved from relationships. The scars would always remain, but they no longer defined me. So what would you have done in my situation? Would you have found a way to forgive a sibling who falsely accused you of something so terrible? Could you ever trust them again? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you or you know someone dealing with false accusations, please hit that like button and subscribe to support others going through similar struggles. Remember, sometimes the family we choose is more important than the family we're born into. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you strength in your own family challenges.